Documents leaked to the BBC about the controversial Cull in Gloucestershire reveal that badgers fleeing from marksmen may have caused new outbreaks of TB in cattle, and that was a factor in why the time period was extended by 8 weeks. The documents suggest that the culling companies are finding it harder and more expensive to kill badgers than they first thought, and may increase the spread of TB rather than reduce it. This comes as the Rural Affairs Minister Owen Paterson is due to face questioning from MPs about the cull. Helen Briggs has seen the documents and tell us a bit more about what they reveal.
Well, the first document from the government agency Natural England looks at figures on badgers culled in the Gloucestershire area. Shows that even after more than doubling the period of the cull in West Gloucestershire, the target of killing 70% of badgers may not be achieved. A target of around 50% is likely, it says, which would mean additional culling next year. And now the document also acknowledges that the perturbation effect, that's where badgers roam further afield, spreading TB onto more badgers and in turn onto cattle, has likely occurred already. The second document is an email from the culling company in Gloucestershire requesting the extension to the cull, and it admits that free shooting was a problem early on in the pilots, and they had to bring in cage trappers and thermal imaging equipment to help the shooters. Now, the NFU says in a statement it won't comment on operational matters, but it says there have been learning experiences as to the best way of carrying out the culls effectively throughout the operations, and the knowledge learned will be essential for helping with future rollout of culls.
What are the implications of this for DEFRA?
Well, there is growing pressure on DEFRA over this policy, particularly on the advice given by the Chief Vet Nigel Gibbons on extending the culls. Now, DEFRA says the advice of the Chief Vet is clear. The more badgers you remove in the first year, the greater and quicker the disease reduction benefits will be. And his advice also states that the benefit of removing a greater proportion of the population is likely to outweigh the effect of perturbation. But there's growing concern and anger from animal welfare groups about the policy. They say free shooting has failed on a massive scale and the cull should be halted now.
Helen Briggs, thank you. Well, the Labour MP Hugh Aranka-Davies is the Shadow Environment Minister and former Environment Minister under the last Labour government. What do you make of these documents?
It's deeply disappointing and quite tragic, actually, for the credibility of independent scientific advice to government based on the evidence of what works. We've always had issues with these culls based on this risk of perturbation, and it seems that that is now coming true. But more than that, there's real questions now over the credibility both of the advice from Natural England to DEFRA, and do bear in mind Helen Briggs was absolutely right in the issues that this raises. What she didn't mention was that DEFRA issued clear guidelines to Natural England on these culls, and they stipulated quite categorically and repeatedly 6 weeks to minimise the risk of perturbation and 70% of the badger population. We know that they failed on both counts, and to go on longer is going to risk worsening the effect on spreading TB.
Well, what DEFRA said, and by the way, we did ask for an interview with them, is that the advice says the benefit from the Chief Vet is the benefit of removing a greater proportion of the population is likely to outweigh the effect of perturbation. That's the risk of badgers spreading the disease.
Well, can I say quite clearly, this risk's now looking like making it up as you go along, because the guidance that I referred to and the assurances given by the Secretary of State Owen Paterson and by the Chief Veterinary Officer in advance of these 2 pilot culls was very clear. It was 6 weeks you needed to carry this out to avoid risking further spread of perturbation and spread of TB.
As you explained to us earlier, but what would Labour do? I mean, the NFU president from the Farmers Union, it says they're frustrated at your party's lack of commitment in tackling the problem, says that you've got to come up with something more meaningful.
Well, I rebut that entirely from the NFU, and we've been clear repeatedly to the NFU and to anybody who's asked. We spent £50 million on a 10-year trial on culls, where the scientists who carried that through concluded, and I quote them, this could make no meaningful contribution to the eradication of TB. We've also been clear on saying that we would make sure that we did deal with the issue within the badger population, and we would do that through fast-tracking both oral and injectable vaccinations to deal with the disease properly. But unfortunately, this government is going about it the wrong way.
Hugh Aranka-Davies, thank you.